Chapter 4. While the honeycomb-colored light left a gloomy atmosphere in the room, Mustafa Kemal Pasha leaned back on the chair he was sitting on. The bruises under his eyes became even more visible. I leaned down timidly and asked with troubled eyes, "Pasha, shall we have a cup of coffee to ease your tiredness?" He crossed his arms on the table, his cigarette-dry lips curled. "A good cup of coffee would be really good, Rauf Pasha," he said, while his sea-blue eyes narrowed. "Mustafa Pasha is coming right away," I said, standing up from my seat and opening the door. I called out to Fute, who was standing right in front of me. "Fute. Fute. Sir Rauf Pasha?" I closed the door slowly so that Mustafa Kemal Pasha would not be disturbed. "Why don't you bring us 2 coffees?" "Oh, no, my Pasha is coming right away," he said and went downstairs, out of breath, beating the wooden steps with his leather boots. I went back inside and set up my chair. Mustafa Kemal was disturbed by the light of the gas lamp on the table and dimmed it. "Don't you think it's weird?" I stumbled in my chair as my eyes rolled around. "What is strange, Pasha?" He didn't take his eyes off me while adjusting the collar of his dress. After he said, "The fact that they still haven't attacked us," a meaningless silence filled the room. We couldn't understand this either, Mustafa Pasha, but they might have another plan in mind. My eyebrows furrowed in suspicion and my heart rate increased. While I was watching the snow fall through the wooden-framed window with its shutters and curtains open, there was a knock on the door. Fute stepped inside, showing the steaming coffees on the tray in his hand. While the bitter but delicious smell of coffee was licking my nose, Fute and I came face to face. He bowed down to Mustafa Kemal Pasha with great attention and offered him. "Here you go, Pasha." "Thank you." It was Fute, wasn't it? Fute repeated, bringing a proud smile to his lips. "Home." "Yes, Pasha." "Fute, enjoy your meal." Then he smiled, handing me the other cup, and I smiled the same way and nodded. Without further delay, he left the room and closed the door. Mustafa Kemal Pasha excitedly brought the cup to his lips and took huge sips of the foamy, delicious coffee. "Oh, that felt good. Live 1,000 years with your wisdom, Rauf Pasha." "Bon appetit, my Pasha. I am happy if it was good for you." I took sips of my steaming coffee one after another. "Rauf Pasha, I am leaving Aksahir tomorrow, but I have no doubt that I will not be left behind. You and your lion-hearted soldiers will continue the spirit of union and progress in Aksahir and restore the homeland to its former freedom. Never deviate from the path you know. They will tell you that your path is not right. Never believe it. Unity will save us. Unity will save us. Do not treat our people with contempt, even if they criticize you. Choose to tell them the truth and touch their hearts. We cannot win this war by breaking and destroying. It makes him an enemy. What will be left of our Turkishness if we do the same in scrupulousness? That's why the sun will rise. The sun will shine on this country." While his eyes, representing an endless blue, were shining with ambition, his hands were shaking with anger and were wandering on the table. "Yes, my Pasha." I tensed in my seat out of respect. After straightening his leather boots that were halfway up his leg, he took the last sip of his coffee and crossed his legs. "Tell me your love story. Let's hear it, Rauf Pasha." As soon as I took the last sip of my coffee, I swallowed hard. But sir, tell me. The Committee of Union and Progress is not just about politics and war. Of course, we will listen to both love and friendship. I interlaced my fingers between my legs and shyly looked into her eyes as my cheeks turned red. "Erva. I fell in love with someone named Erva Pasha. Before the war broke out, I started to look out the window while sitting at the headquarters at night. A silhouette caught my attention. It had come out of a Rasta bazaar and was walking towards this direction. Thinking it was the occupying forces, I quickly went downstairs. It was getting very close. As the snow was just falling, I could neither see the face nor the silhouette of the person coming. I called out to him a few times, but when he got scared of me, he tried to accelerate and fell, slipping in the snow. When I went to her and grasped her elegant hands, I realized that she was a young girl. She tried to avoid me by covering her face with a veil. I picked him up from the ground, but he didn't even look at me. I had released him, and while I was trying to run away, I said, Your handkerchief fell down." He came to me again with shy eyes, and I gave him the tissue. I had a few chats there, and after learning about his house, I started counting the days until I could see him. We would often meet and chat. "My Pasha, He was so good to me that just looking into his eyes was enough. Until last week, I said, falling into a meaningless silence. What happened last week? My Pasha is gone. He left behind, leaving a sad note behind. I just stared after him. His sea blue eyes widened with surprise. Where did it go? No. I don't know, Pasha. All I know is that he still loves me and will love me. While the tears flowing from my eyes were flowing down the tip of my nose, I lowered my gaze to the ground and was sobbing inwardly. Mustafa Kemal got up from the leather-covered chair he was sitting on and walked next to me. After sitting on the chair next to me, he moved his fingers on my shoulder and caressed my back. Don't be sad. Don't be sad. Every darkness has a light. Perhaps Ervo was afraid of the war and wanted to get away from here for a while. When he finished speaking, he took deep breaths. Her, I said with a shaky voice, what if I die without seeing her, Mustafa Kemal Pasha? It turns out that I looked into her eyes without knowing that it was the last time. I caressed her hair without knowing that it was the last time. I kissed her without knowing that it was the last time. I covered my face with my hand. My heart was constantly aching as I cried. Don't think badly. Those who love always reunite. I believe that Ervo loves you very much and is dying to meet you. I sighed as I wiped my tears with my palms. I'm sorry I disturbed you with such an unnecessary issue, Pasha. While his steel blue eyes sparkled, his golden eyebrows frowned. Love has never been unnecessary. What is good for the human soul is constant love. Please don't call love and affection unnecessary again. What glorifies a person is to love and be loved. Tell me, Rauf Pasha, what use would we be without our heart here? You are right, very right, Mustafa Kemal Pasha. While sitting side by side, he turned his chair towards the window and watched with admiration the snowfall. Aksahir. What a beautiful city. Winter, summer, every season is beautiful. Besides the war, we owe you a debt. Pasha, let's wander around the beautiful streets of Aksahir together. His misty eyes bent down in sorrow. If our helpless body does not rot in the sacred lands of this country, we will definitely come. My forehead wrinkled as my eyebrows furrowed. I leaned forward in the chair I was sitting on. May the wind come from your mouth, my Pasha. May God grant you long life. He remained silent, his eyes like flashing, and I hurriedly stood up while watching out of the window with the blinds open. After taking the empty coffee cup from the desk, I opened the door and repeated, Pasha, have a good night. I made you crazy, forgive me. Good luck. Good night, Rauf Pasha. Your friendly conversation was good in these troubled days. While my lips curled with joy, I slowly closed the door and handed the empty cups in my hand to the soldier next to me. I entered my room while the soldier was coming down the stairs. I slowly curled up on the bed in my room and fell into a sweet sleep, convincing myself that these bad days would pass. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The morning sun filtered through the brown blinds and fell in a grid pattern onto my snow-white sheets. I woke up with the bright sunlight hitting my eyes, and I quickly stood up, pulling the quilt at my feet. As I looked around with empty eyes, I felt uneasy. It was like I was doing something wrong. Without wasting any more time, I changed my clothes, adjusted my snow-white quilt, and opened the door to the room. We came face to face with Enver. While he was trimming his thin and curly mustache, he was also looking at me with worried eyes. Good morning, Rauf Pasha. I was just about to wake you up. Good morning, Enver. Where is Mustafa Kemal Pasha? He looked at my office room with his bright eyes and sighed in distress. He just woke up and went to your room, Pasha. While my eyebrows were furrowed, my bright eyes wandered over Enver. So, why didn't you wake me up? She bit her lip and stared at the patterned carpet on the floor. Mustafa Kemal Pasha's order, Rauf Pasha, that's why I was thinking. What did he say? I asked excitedly. Well, my Pasha said, is Rauf Pasha sleeping? And I said, he is sleeping, sir. He just stood there without speaking, and then Rauf Pasha said, don't wake him up. Let him come to me when he wakes up. I put my hand on Enver's shoulder and patted his back. Okay, I'm going to Mustafa Kemal Pasha. I slowly closed the door of my room and stood in front of the large wooden decorated door. I stood in front of the door for a while, breathing deeply. My heart was pounding. I tried to relax by opening and closing my eyes a few times. I hit the wooden door repeatedly with my shaky fist. Come, repeated the authoritative and deep voice inside. I slowly pressed the iron handle of the ornate wooden door, and as the door creaked open, An intense cigarette smell licked my face. Mustafa Kemal was just sitting at the table with thoughtful eyes. "I'm sorry, Ralph Pasha. We sat like this in your place." I cast my embarrassed gaze over him. "Not to mention, Pasha, can I come?" While straightening the collar of his cardigan, he pointed to the chairs in front of me with the hand he was holding a cigarette with. When I looked out of the window with its shutters wide open, snowflakes were rapidly falling to the ground in order. We were going to have a sad new year. "Ralph Pasha," Mustafa Kemal began, taking deep breaths from the cigarette between his lips. "Sir Pasha?" I had my fingers interlocked between my legs in the chair I was sitting on. "New members will join the Committee of Union and Progress, young members," he said and looked at the ground with his troubled eyes. "When you say young members, Pasha," I tried to talk him out of it. "Students from Aksahir Sultanasai School will also be with you from time to time." "Aksahir Sultanasai," I whispered through my teeth. "But Pasha, the students of Aksahir Sultanasai are still young. What do they know about war and weapons?" He turned his increasingly dark blue eyes to the window, sighed in distress, and watched the snowfall for a while. His voice trembled, "I wouldn't want this either, but the army needs even these students. The enemy has reached the border. We have no soldiers in our army. The Istanbul government has tied our hands. Our only solution is these children, Ralph Pasha. Our only solution is these students." "I understand, Pasha." My sorrowful eyes were fixed on our red flag on the wall. I looked at the flag while proudly stroking my mustache. "They are brave-hearted children. They have all risked all the difficult conditions. They will leave their loved ones behind and fight. They said, if necessary, we will go to the Battle of Kanakhil. We owe a youth debt to these students. We owe a life debt to these children. Do you understand me, Ralph Pasha?" While the tears flowing from his steel blue eyes wet his golden mustache, his voice trembled and his cheeks turned red. He was hurting because he was worried about the problems of this country. I understood once again why the Istanbul government did not like Mustafa Kemal, because Mustafa Kemal loved his homeland, because Mustafa Kemal was in love with this nation. I swallowed hard as I settled into my chair. "I understand, Pasha. I understand you very well. Our youth and children did not deserve this." Taking one breath after another from the cigarette between his fingers, he pressed the shrunken cigarette into the ashtray. As I dispersed the gloomy smoke with my hand, I coughed a few times due to the strong odor. There was a deep silence in the room. Then the door was knocked with a loud noise. As the sound echoed through the damp walls, Mustafa Kemal squinted his blue eyes and said, "Come," he said. The door opened. Mustafa Kemal's friend Salih came in, dragging his heavy leather boots. He spoke excitedly, while his thin mustache under his nose was sweating. "Pasha, breakfast is ready. We need to eat and hit the road as soon as possible." While Mustafa Kemal Pasha placed his fisted hands on the table. "Okay, we are coming," he said. Salih had already gone out. While Mustafa Kemal was rubbing his shiny golden hair that he saved from the cap, he turned his face to the brown-framed window. "I will come again to Aksahir. I will come again to this beautiful city. Let's meet on a free day, Ralph Pasha." While my eyebrows were furrowed and my forehead wrinkled, I smiled at him with a proud smile. "This city will be happy to host a heroic Pasha like you, Pasha. May God grant you long life." He put his dry, shaky, and strong fingers on my shoulder. It was the first time I had the opportunity to know and see him so closely. Although he was young, his yellow and bright face had faded and his under eyes were sunken. I looked at him from the corner of my eye without showing the sadness on my face. We left the room and went to the breakfast room where everyone was waiting for us. There was enough food for all of us, although there wasn't much variety on the red velvet-covered table. While the flickering gas lamps were burning on the wall, I timidly entered the room. Saysavar, Enver, Sesmi, Feud, and Tullet were just waiting at the table. Mustafa Kemal Pasha greeted my friends with his loud voice. "Hello, friends." "Hello, Pasha," they all repeated in unison. Mustafa Kemal Pasha slowly sat down on the chair below him and pointed to the empty velvet-covered chairs with his hands, signaling us to sit down. While we were having our breakfast, Mustafa Kemal Pasha's aides had already completed their preparations. As I got up from the breakfast table, my eyes were filled with tears and sadness. Mustafa Kemal Pasha adjusted his leather boots and stepped outside. He put on the thick cardigan that Salih was holding in his hand and put on his heavy black cap. "Ralph Bey, Enver Bey," he repeated, and Enver could not take his astonished gaze off Mustafa Kemal Pasha. "We are listening to you, Mustafa Kemal Pasha." I spoke on behalf of both of us. I heard the name of Enver. He was known for his brave heart. This must be the most distinctive feature of a unionist. Enver and the other lions are entrusted to you. Your trust is our trust, Pasha. Good days will be waiting for us again. He shook my hand with his warm and long fingers. As I looked into my eyes, my heart beat faster and felt like it was going to explode. We slowly opened the door of the headquarters and went outside. The cold air hit me like a slap in the face, and the scent of geranium hit my nose. "Where are you going now, Pasha?" While Saysavar was shivering from the cold without losing her upright stance. "To Afyon." "I'm going to Afyon, Saysavar. We still have many hearts to reach," he said in an emotional voice. "Good luck, Pasha." In the gloomy sky of Aksahir, Mustafa Kemal and his friends reined in their horses after getting on them. As they slowly got smaller in the narrow, snow-covered, crushed stone street, Mustafa Kemal Pasha waved to us with excitement for the last time. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The glass I was holding in my hand made the palm of my hand cold as ice, and I took a huge sip of my red wine, which was shining under the pale oil lamp. As the tart wine flowed from my lips to my throat, it warmed my veins and made me dizzy. While stumbling on the chair I was sitting on, I opened the bay window. I was holding the last letter Irva wrote to me in my hand. Beads of tears were flowing from my eyes and flowing from the tip of my nose. Later, the letter that Saysavar gave me came to my mind. I quickly placed the wine glass on the wooden table in front of me and stood up from the chair I was sitting on. I took out the folded letter from the pocket of my cardigan on the iron hanger. To Maypair, I read the note written on the back in a whisper between my lips. "Oh, Saysavar, so you fell in love too, huh?" My lips curled involuntarily. While my eyes were shining with joy, I wondered how a soldier standing seriously in front of me could write a love letter. I dragged my feet and reached for the phone on the desk, lifted the handset and dialed the number. The sour taste of the wine remained between my lips as I held the phone to my ear. "Hello." I gripped the phone receiver tightly and spoke with forced swallowing. "Hello, Saysavar. Is that you?" "My Rauf Pasha," he said without losing his seriousness. "The letter." My eyes were filled with tears, my voice hoarse. "I have your letter. Should I deliver it to Maypair?" He coughed repeatedly and his excited voice was heard on the other end of the phone. "If you do this favor for me, I will not leave this war with my eyes open, my dear." "What kind of words is that?" "You will not leave with your eyes open. We will shout out our love in the freest times of this country." "I'm sorry, Pasha. These are war situations. There is no guarantee for our future. We are ready to sacrifice our lives and blood with the crumbs of hope in our hearts." I sobbed inwardly as I gripped the phone receiver tightly. The tears flowing from my eyes dripped from the tip of my nose onto my dry lips. "Don't worry, I will deliver this letter to Maypair." While my heart was pounding, I reached over to the table next to me, took my unfinished wine glass, and finished my wine by taking a big sip. As I replaced the phone receiver, I stepped towards the shuttered window. At that moment, I heard a loud voice behind me. As I staggered in fear, I turned my misty gaze back. A thick dark-bound book had fallen from my bookshelf, and I smiled to myself involuntarily. With cautious steps, I bent over the book and shook the dust off the hardcover. Crime and Punishment was written on the cover. "Irva," I whispered. The novel that Irva left me and that she enjoyed reading very much. As my eyes narrowed, I carefully picked up the thick book lying on the ground. When I opened the hardcover, I saw the wet ink written in beautiful handwriting on the first page. "Every crime has a punishment. Even if you escape from everything, you can never escape from the judgment of your conscience. My crime was always loving you, but this was such a crime that the punishment was to be imprisoned for a lifetime in your eyes." I couldn't swallow while reading the lines. My words got stuck in my throat. I cried heartily as I caressed the note on the page of the book with the trembling index finger of my right hand. I smiled bitterly as I closed the book and put it on the top shelf. It was like I was giving up half of my heart. Wiping my tears with my square embroidered handkerchief, I grabbed my coat and walked down the creaking wooden steps. A bitter cold gave me chills on the ground floor, where the armchairs were located. Without making a fuss, I straightened the curves of my mustache, combed my hair under my cap, and started walking down the crushed stone street blocked by snow. My shy hand was constantly checking Saysavar's letter, making sure it was there. The sun appeared through the mountains surrounding Aksahir and smiled through the gloomy gray clouds. I was trying to rub and warm my fingers, which were shaking from the cold, by clasping them together. I stopped in front of the yellow-painted house with blue shutters that Saysavar described. At that time, the evening call to prayer was echoing with all its power in the mosque whose ridge was burning. With steam coming out of my mouth, I knocked on the decaying wooden door of the house. Faint squeaks were heard from the steps of the house, and my darkened eyes under my eyebrows involuntarily shifted to the small window next to the door. The door opened slowly, and as I sighed deeply, I pressed the paper between my fingers into my palm with all my strength. "Who are you?" A low female voice was heard with shy eyes shining through the gauze. I am Commander Ralph, the commander of Saysavar." "Who are you?" The woman opened the door with a forced smile. "Yes, I remember, Mr. Ralph. I am Maypear. Come on in." Burju pointed to the house that smelled of Dibet coffee and invited me inside. "No, I won't come," he interrupted me as his lips curled. "I made coffee. You would drink it hot. It would warm you up, Brother Ralph." I lowered my gaze and continued my words timidly. "Thank you for your kind invitation, Maypear. Another time. My real reason for coming here is different." My face became shadowed, and the smile on my lips suddenly gave way to a deep seriousness. Or did something happen to Saysavar? His voice was shaking and his eyes were red. No, it's nothing like that. I brought you a letter, the letter written by Saysavar." As the pensive expression on Maypear's face disappeared, she suddenly felt relieved. Her tearful eyes fell on the straw yellow envelope in my hand, and I quickly gave the envelope in my palm to Maypear. After taking it from me with excitement, he looked at me with his increasingly dark eyes. "Thank you, Brother Ralph. May God forgive you for this nation and your loved ones. Please convey my greetings to Saysavar, sir." While his lips curled cheerfully, the small dimples on his round chin were visible. "What do you mean? Come on, stay safe. Don't stay here any longer. You'll catch a cold." He went inside with the envelope in his hand, cheerful like a little child, and closed the door. At that moment, my meetings with Irva, our laughter, and our farewells came to my mind. That day, I said goodbye to your eternity for the last time without knowing it. I looked into your eyes for the last time. I felt the warmth of your skin for the last time. I kissed you for the last time without knowing. As I walked on the snowy road with my boots on, the ache in my heart had spread throughout my body. The wine I drank was still taking effect, making me feel dizzy. As I approached the headquarters, I saw the occupying soldiers in crowds on the roadside, staring at the headquarters with their rifles slung over their shoulders. I approached the headquarters with uneasy steps, and they never took their serious eyes off me on the snow-covered sidewalks. As I entered the headquarters door, the heat from the stove burning in the lobby licked my face. My wire-rimmed glasses fogged up, and I saluted the soldiers working at the desk. I missed entering the headquarters door like this. Even though I was not an official commander, just breathing the air of this place was enough. I climbed up, beating the creaking wooden steps with my black, shiny, leather boots. Fyut stood up from the armchair where he was sitting and paid his respects. "Hello, Fyut." While trying to open the door of my room, he said in a shy voice. "Hello, Ralph Pasha," he said. "Pasha, there is a telegram for you." My heart was beating faster while my eyes were popping out of their heads. I smiled involuntarily, imagining that the telegram was from Irva. From who? I didn't show Fyut the bitter smile on my face. Riza Bey from the Committee of Union and Progress. He squinted and read the text on the back of the folded paper. At that moment, my face fell involuntarily, and my fingers, flushed and trembling from the cold, clenched into fists. The words I was about to say were stuck in my throat. Okay, I'll take it." With sleight of hand, I grabbed the paper from his palm and entered my room. Despite this winter, the sun smiling at Aksahir through the white mountains filtered through curtains and fell on my wide table through the blinds. Before settling into my leather-covered swivel chair, I took off my cashmere coat and hung it on the iron hanger. When I looked out the window, I could see the occupying soldiers looking at the western headquarters out of the corner of their eyes. I just sat where I was, without taking my sad eyes off the piece of paper. My shaky fingers opened the folded paper, and when I saw the black dots scattered like ants on the white page, I felt a strange distress. Without making a fuss, I began to read the telegram from Riza Bey. "Dear Ralph Pasha, As a country, as Axa we are going through a very difficult period. We, the Committee of Union and Progress, are constantly trying to tie their hands, but we can never turn a blind eye to such a thing. I am grateful to you and your soldiers for lighting the fire of revolution in this country with us by risking your seats and ranks for this cause. Of course, my purpose in sending this telegram to you is different. Our country echoes with the sound of cannons, the guns of enemy ships are exploding in the Bosphorus, and the war is growing day by day. We have thousands of martyrs and hundreds of injured. Our brave men rush to the front, and our ladies rush to the medical tents to become caregivers. In this situation, our army needs a large number of soldiers, and Aksahir Sultanasai has mobilized in the best way possible for this situation. I am grieving. I am in distress. I still can't understand how our children, who need to hold a pin, can fight against shrapnel behind wooden-handled rifles, but we need to train these students who are just learning about love and include them in the army. For this purpose, the brave scouts of Aksahir Sultanasai are entrusted to you, and you will take care of them. I believe in the warmth of your fatherly heart, Rauf Pasha. We will extinguish the fire of this war together as a nation. God bless you, brave heroes of the Committee of Union and Progress. At the end of the article, my eyes were filled with tears. I turned my filled gaze from the paper to the window with wooden frames and sighed in distress. While I was tidying up my hair that was messy with my cap, I was just thinking, with my fingers interlocked. I turned towards the door with my leather chair and called out in my loud voice. Saysavar. Saysavar. There were quick steps behind the door and Saysavar knocked on the door and slowly stuck her head in. Sir Rauf Pasha? Come on, Saysavar, get in there, I said, pointing to the pale-colored armchairs in front of me. He sat down on the chair, adjusting his red fez. As I lifted my head from the paper, I slowly folded the paper and placed it in the empty space next to my cigarette ashtray. There is a telegram. From Riza Bey, the founder of the Committee of Union and Progress. While Saysavar's eyebrows were furrowed, she never took her gaze away from my eyes. What does the telegram say, Pasha? I moistened my dry lips with my tongue. Aksahir Sultanasai, I said and stroked my mustache. Aksahir Sultanasai's students will be sent to the front. They are currently in a camp under the umbrella of Union and Progress. Saysavar smiled bitterly as she turned her eyes to the black typewriter in distress. But how can this happen, Rauf Pasha? They are just children. They need to look at their future with bright eyes. While I interlocked my fingers on the table, I did not take my amber gaze away from my friend. Everyone knows this. The whole Aksahir, the whole country is crying for these children, but there is nothing else we can do. There was a need for soldiers on the front. The enemy is now at our doorstep, waiting for an opportunity. We have no other choice. He leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms over his body. There was an uncomfortable silence in the room. Nothing could be heard other than the crackling of the stove burning in the middle of the room, while the sweet smell of orange peels scattered on the stove was licking my nose. I broke the silence by clearing my throat. Let's visit these students in Heiderlich, where they are camping. Saysavar shook her head as she gathered herself in the armchair where she was sitting. This would be very good, Pasha. At least they will know that they are not alone. His amber eyes narrowed under his eyebrows as his lips curled proudly. By the way, I delivered your letter to Maypair. His eyes sparkled with excitement, as if he had always been waiting for that moment. Did you give it to me, Pasha? I am truly grateful to you. As my eyes narrowed, I smiled in a whisper. Yes, I did. Maypair was very happy with this letter from you. It's all me to say. His cheekbones turned red as he turned his gaze to the burning stove, and he remained silent while licking his lips. Don't be shy, Saysavar. Don't be ashamed of love, that's all. Loving is also a need. Being loved is also a need. Of course, you will hand over the key to your heart to a smile, even though you are a member of the Committee of Union and Progress. Show your unionist courage and love. I stood up from the chair I was sitting on and shook his shoulder in a friendly manner. It is so nice to hear love from someone like you who knows the value of love, Rauf Pasha. I cannot explain it. I just smiled as my misty gaze stared out the window with its shutters wide open. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. While the snow accumulating on the branches of the pine trees was bending the dry and thin branches downwards, the sun appearing through the pines painted the Heiderlich forest green and brought all the fresh scents to my nose. While the snow exposed to the heat of the sun was melting with a splash, I was climbing the narrow mountain road surrounded by trees. Ah, these rapists owe these young people a life debt. Enver spoke with determination while adjusting his red fez. Sesmi stroked his curly mustache under his small nose and said, Enver Pasha is right, Ralph Pasha. These are children with dreams for the future. I continued walking for a while, with my dull gaze, without speaking. I am ready to sacrifice my blood, so are you. But these young people want to be in the prime of their lives, in front of the eyes of their loved ones. After walking a little further, my eyes were caught by the brightly colored tints set up at regular intervals. While the smoke of a fire burning in the middle of the forest was rising towards the sky, the smell of cooking milk fed my nose. I saw young people in scout uniforms running happily between the tents. His mustache had just begun to sweat, and his sincere smile had just begun to appear on his lips. Oh my God, don't spoil the joy of these children, Tullet said without taking his sad eyes off the crowded group of young people. Amine, we said with all our friends. With my hands in my pockets and my still gaze on the ground, I approached the tents. When I saw us arriving, I saw a tall man approaching me from inside the large dark tent, adjusting his red fez and dark green uniform. Welcome, you brought joy. Ralph Pasha, right? A forced smile came to my lips as I shook the dry and bony hand he extended to me. Home. Yes, I am Ralph from the Committee of Union and Progress. And who are you? While his flashing eyes were darkening, his eyebrows were knitted and his forehead was wrinkled. I am Ahmet Robinson, the teacher in charge of this camp. Isn't Aksahir Sultanasai teacher Ahmet Robinson? His curved lips under his thin mustache became moist. I am them, sir. Go inside the tent. Don't stay in the cold like this. Let's serve you hot milk. Despite the steely cold outside, I took my hands out of my pockets and walked towards the tent behind Ahmet Robinson. The middle-aged teacher spoke to the students reading books inside. Tariq, continue reading in the other tent. We will host your military brothers in this tent. As the children jumped up with excitement, they made bookmarks with their fingers on the books in their hands. I caressed their soft hair as they passed me, and both of their bright eyes were shining. Ahmet Robinson turned his eyes towards us with excitement as he sat down on the chair in front of the table. Please sit. Tariq, he repeated over and over again. The young man ran towards the tent and opened the entrance of the tent. Sir, Ahmet Robinson. While the young man's eyes burned like fire, Ahmet Robinson added while looking at us with his eyes. Can you bring us 7 glasses of freshly cooked milk? Of course, Ahmet Robinson, he's coming right away. As the young man disappeared behind the tent, Ahmet Robinson turned his bright eyes towards me. What a beautiful camp this is. I saw the most beautiful form of unity and solidarity. That's right, Ralph Pasha, our students are warm-hearted and brave children. While interlocking my fingers, I turned my troubled eyes out the small window of the tent. We will give them rifles and send them to the front when all they have to worry about is their studies, their future, and their love. While my friends listened to our conversation with calm eyes, Ahmet Robinson continued his words. The strange thing is that they are also willing to go to the front, and I am surprised by this. I am sure that they already have a true union and progress heart. He listened to the crackling of the burning wood for a while without speaking, then said, I asked the students, my Pasha, why do you want to go to so many fronts when the only thing you care about is your classes? They were so angry with me. Remember, Mr. Ahmet Robinson, if you don't have a homeland, you don't have a future. Let our lives end young, but what will future generations say about us? That's why we are ready to fight and die for the future of our country, they said. I was very touched, my Pasha. Believe me, I cannot sleep at night. I couldn't swallow as the things I was about to say stuck in my throat. May God spare these brave sons of ours to the homeland. Amine. Each of them deserves to be kissed in the eyes, believe me. While Saysavar was speaking with a proud voice, the curtain of the tent was opened and the sun filtering through the pines just seeped into the tent in bunches. The wavy-haired young man from earlier came in with a tray in his hand. The milk has arrived, sir. The pleasant and fresh smell of milk steaming over iron glasses hit my nose. Ahmet Robinson's curved lips were smiling when he said, Deliver the milk to the military brothers, Tariq. Everyone took turns taking their hot milk from the tray held by Tariq and started drinking it sip by sip. As Tariq left the tent and closed the curtain, I continued my words. So when will this camp end? He turned his eyes to the straw-yellow paper calendar on his desk. Tomorrow. Tomorrow is the last day. Our students and teachers have started to recover. He looked at me with his misty, sad eyes and said, the French also decided to close Aksahir Sultanasai. While my eyes were popping out of their heads, the hot milk burned my lips. This. How could this happen? How could they do something like this? While he crossed his arms on the table, he continued speaking without taking his troubled eyes off me. Their main goal was to close the school and leave the students and teachers helpless. But when they heard that both the teachers and the students were going to the army, they were afraid. So who is this order coming from? He had asked with all seriousness, scratching his mustache. Which order? Said Ahmet Robinson. The order to close Aksahir Sultanasai. From the Istanbul government. His eyebrows were furrowed and he smiled bitterly. It's like a joke, but it's true, he said. I sat up from the chair I was sitting on, drinking the last sip of milk from the hot iron glass between my fingers. Thank you for the milk. It is delicious and fresh. I also want to meet with the students. Of course, Rauf Pasha. Ahmet Robinson stood up from his chair, wiping the drops of milk that stained his black mustache white. My friends also stood up while placing their empty iron glasses on the short-legged table in front of them. I took quick steps forward and opened the curtain of the tent. Tall young people with sharp eyes were eyeing me with curiosity. Hello, guys. While the children were adjusting their cream-colored hats, Ahmet Robinson's voice was heard. Young people, the Commander Rauf I told you about is a unionist, he added while smiling, while the young man who had just brought us milk stepped towards me, soothing his wavy hair that had hardened from the cold with his hand. Hello, Commander Rauf. I'm Tariq. Hello, Tariq. I looked into his eyes shining with excitement as he shook his hand. Us. You will send us to the front, right? Enough of us standing idle. We are ready to do whatever we can, he said, his brave gaze shifting to his friends. How do you hold those rifles? How do you carry hundreds of kilos of cannons? You have to listen to your lessons and save your future. You were not born a soldier from your mother's womb, Rauf Pasha. We will go and learn whatever is necessary. Our army needs us. We know that. While laughing heartily at what he said, I touched his shoulder with my shaky fingers. Of course you will learn, but you are too young. It doesn't matter to me that I am young, Pasha. If I can hold a gun, I owe it to this country whose bread I eat. I want to fight on the Çanakkale fronts, not in Aksahir. Do whatever you can to send us away. As my heartbeat accelerated, I looked into his eyes with pride. Today, I began. I received a telegram from Reza Bey, one of the great commanders of the Committee of Union and Progress, regarding the camp you held today. You will be sent to the front. As Tariq's mouth reached his ears, the teeth appearing between his lips could be counted. You're not kidding, are you, Rauf Pasha? Ah. No, why should I joke? The Turkish nation will never forget your brave heart and your heroic attitude. You will write the epic of the country. He jumped at my hand with excitement and tried to kiss my hand. I held him by his forehead and kissed his white forehead under his wavy hair. May our lives and blood be sacrificed for this nation, this country. He raised his fist to the sky and his loud voice echoed on the slopes of Heiderlich. May God help you, young people. Go steadfastly, come steadfastly. The chubby and red-cheeked boy standing behind Tariq, adjusting his uniform and cap on his head, intervened. Yes, we will go safely, Rauf Pasha, but there is no guarantee that we will come again. Don't cry when this helpless body of ours gets mixed up with the Holy Land, okay? Then we will be the Turkish nation, as long as our blood waters the soil of Çanakkale and Aksahir. As the tears flowing from my bright eyes dripped from the tip of my nose to my lips, I wiped my red eyes and sobbed inwardly. Your name? What is your name, son? Fizi. Fizi, my Pasha, he said, while frowning his chubby face. You. I will never, ever forget you. My eyes were filled with tears as I squeezed my upper lip and lower lip. We, too, Pasha, have always followed the orders about you and what was done to you, but we could not do anything. But now we are going to the front, to smell the gunpowder. Suddenly, his face was shadowed and his eyes were filled with tears. I patted him on the shoulder in a friendly manner and started running downstairs quickly. I was running on the road surrounded by pine trees, crushing the snow with my leather boots, without even looking back. Pasha. Pasha, where are you going? Please wait. My heart was beating faster, and I couldn't stop the tears flowing from my eyes. I leaned my hand on the huge plane tree in the middle of Heiderlich and, unable to bear it any longer, I burst into tears. I covered my face with both hands and was sobbing. I felt Enver's fingers on my shoulder. Pasha, you are worrying us. Don't do that. While I put my shaky fingers on Enver's shoulder in the same way, I leaned my head on one side of his shoulder. Did not you see? What, Ralph Pasha? Enver asked in a bitter voice, the fire burning inside the eyes of young people. I saw it, Pasha. Can I not see it? They reminded me of you, Pasha. I lifted my head from his shoulder and smiled hopelessly as I wiped the tears from my curling mustache. They were different, brave, they were truly this child's homeland. May God not give opportunity to the occupying degenerates and the dirty tricks of the Istanbul government. Amen. We will hold them accountable for every drop of tear that falls from your eyes. Sesme muttered angrily while adjusting his cap on his head. Wiping my tears with the palm of my right hand, I sniffled, buried my head deep into my coat as the bitter cold hit my face and made my skin shiver. We started walking towards the school to talk to the principal of Aksahir Sultanasai. I couldn't understand why we were walking comfortably as if there were no enemy forces in Aksahir, but I was constantly checking the revolver on my waist with my hand. When we arrived in front of Aksahir Sultanasai, it was already approaching evening. As the sun slowly disappeared over the mountains, the twilight turned blood red. As the snow began to fall from the sky again, a pale light was reflected outside in a single room of the school. The school, located right in the middle of the canal passing through the middle of Aksahir, stood in front of the mighty mountains. As I looked at the walls of the Sultani, I felt my heart ache and a feeling of distress descending on me. The school was so quiet and deserted that I couldn't help but feel emotional. While my hair was blowing in the evening wind, I put a warm, furry cap on my head. As soon as I stepped onto the stone steps of the school and stood in front of the huge ornate door, the sound of the evening call to prayer was heard from Khaleesi Mosque. As the muezzin's voice echoed among the bay-windowed houses, I slowly opened the door of the school. As I stepped into the dim darkness, the smell of books mixed with the smell of dust licked my nose. Tullet asked as he looked up the stairs with suspicion, "Are we sure there is someone inside, Pasha?" "The light is on. He will definitely be one of the teachers of the school." I repeated it insistently with my eyebrows furrowed in the gloomy darkness. When I stepped inside, I saw footsteps approaching from the upper floor in the dim light of the gas lamp. Who was there? As the flickering light of the gas lamp approached, a voice with a French accent echoed on the walls of Aksahir Sultanasai. "It's me, Commander Ralph." As the footsteps slowed down, I saw in silhouette the plump face of a stocky and short man holding a kerosene lamp in his hand. Ralph, Commander, welcome. Come on, sir. Don't stand there." As I walked up the banister next to the steps, I heard the stocky man's voice again. "We were just about to leave. Very good timing. There are no students in the school anymore," he said, his voice tone lowered and his steps slowed down. "When we were going to leave, is there someone else besides you?" While she was combing her sparse hair back, she looked at me with her eyes shining in the light of the gas lamp. Yes, Mr. Ralph, our German teacher Mr. Rommel is with me this evening." As my eyebrows furrowed in suspicion, I continued, "What is your duty?" As he approached the large and decorated wooden door, he smiled bitterly without looking at me. "I am Aksahir Sultanasai manager Namek." My lower lip slowly curled up. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Namek," said the manager as he opened the wooden decorated door. "Nice to meet you too, Mr. Ralph." After opening the door, he guided me by pointing to his dimly lit room with his hand. As I entered the door with a sweet smile on my lips, the bald-headed, blonde German teacher, who was reading a book on the chair he was sitting on, quickly sat up from the chair he was sitting on and left the book on the table. "Hello, sir." Hello. He spoke forcefully in his not very smooth Turkish. I sat down on the chair right next to him and interlaced my fingers between my legs. Immediately behind me, my friends sat down on the chairs placed in front of the table. Rommel was just staring at me and my friends with his ice blue eyes under his blonde eyebrows. Before sitting on his chair, Namek turned a little more power to the dimly lit oil lamp on the wall. "How are you, German teacher Mr. Rommel?" As he leaned towards me from his chair, he said with a smile on his lips. "I'm fine, sir. How are you?" The rough German accent in his Turkish was constantly showing. "We are fine too. Are you new in Aksahir?" He looked away from me while clearing his throat. I am new in Aksahir, but I am not new in Turkey. My eyebrows were furrowed as my eyes narrowed in the flickering light of the gas lamp. Where were you a teacher before, Mr. Rommel? At Galatasaray Sultanasai. I was a teacher at Galatasaray Sultanasai, he said, and while his sea blue eyes became sad and his face became shadowed, he remembered his past memories and smiled bitterly. You have experience then? No way. No way, okay? He chose his words thoughtfully. I smiled at Rommel in the chair I was sitting on and turned to Namek. We came to talk about your students, Mr. Namek. Her lips turned into a straight line as she scratched her hair. Of course, I am listening to you, Mr. Ralph. Your students will join the army. While Namek was clearing his throat, he turned his wide eyes to me, while Rommel leaned down from the chair he was sitting on and put his hands on my knees. But how can this happen, Mr. Ralph? They are still young. They have a future. They also wanted it very much, but we, as Aksahir Sultanasai, opposed it. Yes, I have talked a lot about this issue, but sometimes the tongue has to be silent when the heart wants it. As my words came out with all their determination, my eyebrows were knitted and my fingers moved on the table. We can't do this. We can't throw these students who can hold a pin under cannons, rifles, or bombs, Mr. Ralph. While I was trying to maintain the calm expression on my face, Rommel and I came face to face. Her sea blue eyes, screaming infinity, were looking at me pleadingly. As a result of the decision, I say that the army needs even these young people. The decision from the Committee of Union and Progress is in this direction, but I do not do business without understanding and listening. This morning, I visited your students while they were camping in Heiderlich. Ahmet Robinson's camp? Namek intervened with curious eyes. After saying yes, the student camp under the management of Ahmet Robinson, I quickly continued to explain. The students were so excited that they all said, "May our lives and blood be sacrificed for this country." That's why there is no point in putting more pressure on these children here. Those who want to leave school can voluntarily join the army. As the tone of my voice gradually decreased, my eyes became misty again in the room lit by the flickering and pale oil lamp. So every student who wants to go to the front from school can enlist in the army. Yes, I said, my voice shaking. Yes, they can be written. When I finished my words, I watched the snow fall for a while through the window with the curtains wide open. Don't worry, those children have grown up in such a way that this country will rise on their shoulders, and they will build steel walls against the enemy. Enver spoke with determination while placing his wire-rimmed glasses on his eyes with the index finger of his left hand. While Rommel untied his bright red tie that was tied on his white shirt, he looked at Enver with his sparkling eyes. You are right, but I cannot understand it. Now is the time when they will dream and chase after the ones they love. I stood up from the chair I was sitting on with great determination and stuck the thumbs of both my hands between my leather belt. I don't know what your children are like, Mr. Rommel, but our children know when to dream and when to face bitter truths. Their concern for the future is not just a simple career choice. Dirty enemy boots have set foot in their homeland, and this is their main concern for the future right now. That's why they are ready to sacrifice their lives for this country where they earn as much as they can. Even though I'm sad, I'm proud of them. The drops of sweat on my mustache could be seen in the pale light of the oil lamp. While Rommel was writhing in his chair, he took out his square embroidered handkerchief from the pocket of his tailor-made jacket and wiped his tears. With your permission, Mr. Namek, I felt bad. You can leave, Mr. Rommel. When Namek pointed to the door with his hand, Rommel went out, straightening his carefully combed blonde hair. Forgive me, I had to explain the situation. Actually, please excuse us. He is only upset with his students. My eyes grew smaller under my furrowed eyebrows as they misted. I understand, Mr. Namek. I understand very well. In the silence in the room, only our breathing could be heard. It's late, Mr. Namek. I wish you a good night. Send us the list as soon as the students return to school tomorrow, I said. While smiling forcefully with the fake smile he brought to his face, he stood up from the chair he was sitting on and extended his hand. After squeezing his long and bony fingers, my group and I walked helplessly through the dim and deserted corridors of the Sultan. When we went outside, the snowfall had accelerated and was falling as if blown from the sky. I walked towards my house with thoughtful eyes on the snowy and gloomy streets of Aksahir. ****. A sweet fatigue took over my body and was pressing on my eyelids. The moon appeared as if it was a hope in the darkness of the night and was hitting my typewriter through the gaps in my tulle curtains. While reading the tiny letters scattered on the straw yellow paper, I couldn't get enough of the novel. I slowly leaned back in the chair I was sitting on, stretched, and closed the cover of my book slowly, marking where I left off in the novel. When I took my book in my hand, I wrapped it in my arms like Irva and wanted to inhale its scent. As I stared helplessly out the window, it occurred to me that I would worry about my typewriter. I moved my chair closer, put my book next to me, and started randomly pressing the keys of the typewriter. I missed writing and dreaming very much after these painful realities. After my fingers came and went on the keys for a while, when I dreamed of Irva's hair falling apart on my shoulder, my fingers started to move faster and faster on the keys. I live with the dream of being reunited with you. I can no longer taste the hot salop with lots of cinnamon we drank together. I miss caressing your hair on my shoulder and looking into your eyes so much. The flames inside the homeland are heating up. There is no guarantee of another 5 minutes. Let me shed blood for this homeland. I loved you not with my heart, which is a piece of meat, but with the heart that my soul sees. I look at the streets we walked with you. I look at the bay window where you watch me every day without you. I know, while I was burning with the love of the revolution, I could spare little time for you. But I realized that love is more burning than the revolution. That's why I will stay with my books, be interested in art, and pass on the banner of revolution to others after the war. With your hand in one hand, the novels we read together in the other, we will write the books of the future together. From now on, I will completely turn my face to books. Even if I die in this war, I will always love you in my next life. When I looked up from the typewriter, I saw the full pages in front of me. I had taken revenge for the times I couldn't write in one night. Maybe I will meet you, Irva, when this novel spills onto the pages, I whispered to myself. Even though you don't see it, even though you don't hear it, this heart aches for you. I looked at the novel Crime and Punishment, which was sitting on one side of the table, and read the note he wrote for me on the first page, with misty eyes. I didn't know that love was a desperation. It turned out that it was the most beautiful desperation, at the point where you know that even your smile gives you life. I slowly turned off the oil lamp that was burning on one side of my table, which was covered with a snow-white tablecloth. The gloomy and dim moonlight filtering through the bay window, filtered through the tulle curtain and fell on my bed. When I stood up from the chair I was sitting on, my eyes were closing and my feet were staggering. I lay on my bed as if I had drank a barrel of wine. When I put my hand between my head and my pillow, I remembered Ova and smiled at the wide ceiling of my house. While even your dreams are beautiful, it feels very good to think of you in this bitter war. As the gloomy moonlight shone in my eyes, I had already fallen into a deep sleep. While ash-colored clouds dominated the sky, snow continued to fall at full speed. I stood up, pulling the quilt at my feet, and my hand quickly reached for the radio at my head. When I turned the golden yellow knob, an ear-splitting hum filled my head. I also checked other channels. There was a general distress. I turned off the radio helplessly while bending my eyes to the ground in distress. As I looked at my broadcloth uniform hanging on the hanger staring at me, my lips curled with pride and my hands caressed the uniform. My eyes were fixed on the pointed sword shining next to my brightly colored uniform. Daddy. Daddy, I repeated, whispering through my lips. I finished my sentence by saying, my father's sword. While my father was lying ill in his last breath, he entrusted this sword to me, saying, you will be a brave soldier for this country and fight for your country in difficult times of this country, looking at this sword. Keep this for the rest of your life, okay? He even said, if you have a son, leave him an inheritance so that he knows how brave his father is. My shaky fingers caressed the unsheathed sword, and I sighed in distress as tears curtained my eyes. I wonder what my father would say if he heard that such a brave soldier was in love. Would he say, forget love? What love is it when the homeland is lost? Or would he say, don't leave it even in this time of war? While I was hiccuping inside and thinking about the answer to this question, I stood up from where I was sitting without lingering any longer, got dressed, and threw myself into the snowy Axahir streets. It was as if a strong smell of gunpowder and blood had mixed into the ashen-colored, gloomy air. My nose inhaled this breath bitterly. While I was walking with determined steps among the houses with bay windows, I saw a figure approaching me. My hand quickly reached for the revolver on my waist. While the snowflakes were flying rapidly, I couldn't make out exactly who it was. As I stepped towards the mysterious silhouette with skeptical eyes, I saw that it was Sasevar right in front of me. He was approaching me with a calm face, with a bundle of newspapers tucked under his arm. "Good morning, Ralph Pasha." The tone of his voice had dropped and his lips had turned into a straight line. "Day." "Good morning, Sasevar. What is this situation?" He held the newspapers in his hands and handed them towards me, looking down. "About us. My Pasha issued a death sentence against us." "Istanbul government?" I said, in my familiar voice. "They're the ones, Pasha." "Don't worry, forget about these newspapers. A death sentence has been issued, but will we go under this gallows? That is important. Aren't we going to enter? Of course we won't go in, but give me this newspaper, let me see." I took the newspaper he was desperately holding in his hand and skimmed through its lines. "Treason will not go unpunished. The death sentence for the gang under the command of Commander Ralph, who organized under the name of Committee of Union and Progress and opposed every decision of the Istanbul government and caused civil unrest and controversy in our country, was published today by the Sultan's decree. Especially Ralph, death sentences were issued for former soldiers named Sasevar, Sesmi, Silüet, Silüet, and Enver. This group, which started an uprising with a coup by killing our Greek commander and Yusuf commander in Aksahir West headquarters, will be executed as soon as possible. Decree of will. My teeth were clenched together in anger, and my fingers were balled into fists. I squinted my eyes and crumpled the newspaper in my palm. I blew out angrily as I inhaled and exhaled the ash-colored steam coming out of my mouth due to the cold. Again, Hukmu Arada newspaper. Again Ali Riza. They are trying to attract the public to their side. While I frowned, I stared at the sky with my amber eyes. Yes, there is that too, but they are running out. They are running out. How so, Pasha? While I was hitting my leather boots angrily on the snowy ground, I pulled a cigarette from the silver cigarette case I took out of my pocket to my lips, lit the cigarette, and filled the smoke into my lungs with great distress. When the Greek commander and the soldier named Yusuf were killed, the command centers in Aksahir were dispersed and the Sultan's authority was weakened when the Committee of Union and Progress emerged together with the Kuvay Milli. In this case, they are trying to prove that there is still a unity of power by printing such news in pro-government newspapers, but in vain. While Sasevar's lips curled with joy, her eyes smiled. Then Pasha, free days are near. I took deep breaths from the cigarette I put to my lips and started walking with lazy steps, as I said. It's too early for this, Sasevar. This is just the beginning. Look, Istanbul is occupied. Enemy ships are anchored in the Dardanelles, and at any moment they can pass through the strait and launch harassing fire on the shores and make a landing. That's why our army must recover immediately. I could only hear the crunch of the snow mass crushing under my boots. I continued to walk down the narrow street of Aksahir, taking deep breaths from the cigarette that was still smoking between my lips. My sorrowful gaze would lean forward from time to time and dive into deep thoughts. As I was about to enter the door of the headquarters, I heard a weak voice behind me. "Ralph Commander." "R.A. Ralph Commander." When I turned my alarmed gaze back, a little boy was running towards me, wading through the snow on the snow-covered road. As I looked at the boy's red cheeks sweating from running and cold, I saw that it was Ollie. "Stop. Stop, Ollie. Don't run. You'll fall. I'm here. Calm down. Come." "I came," he said, wiping the drool from the corner of his mouth. "No. What's the rush?" He pointed the piece of what he imagined as a rifle between his sausage-like fingers at me and said excitedly. "Students were going to the front," he said. I had a hard time keeping myself from laughing as my lips involuntarily smiled. I continued my words with a serious expression on my face. "Home." "Yes, they are going." "My dear, what happened?" "I want to go too. Can you write me in too, Commander Ralph?" Her eyes were shining so bravely as she inhaled the snot dripping from the tip of her nose. I bent down on both knees and took her cheeks between my hands. I looked into her eyes with admiration as I kissed her forehead under her wavy hair. "Ollie, of course you will be a brave soldier, but not now." While swallowing the breadcrumbs he was mouthing, he interrupted me. "No, let it be now. How am I different from the students at school? And I am stronger." I smiled bitterly as I lowered my gaze to the ground. Ali, it is more important for you to stay in Axihir and protect Axihir. But I ate my bread. While I frowned and laughed at his face, I continued. Which bread? Halva bread, he said, looking into my eyes with all seriousness. You need to eat more. It can't be like this. The soldier has to be very strong. You are a Turkish soldier, Ali. You need to defend Axihir better. He looked disdainfully at the piece of wood he held in his hand. Well, can I also have a good gun? Because I cannot hit the enemy occupying my homeland with this. Isn't it possible? It will be the best, as long as you return home as soon as possible, said Ali's mother, who came running. Ali, may God bless you. How did you get here? Ali turned his worried gaze to his mother and swallowed hard. I said something to the commander, mother. Ali's mother looked at me sheepishly and muttered. I'm sorry, please, Pasha, he's just a child. A brave boy, Ali, isn't he? What's wrong, sir? Ali is my dear friend. While his lips were curling with joy, he was drawing shapes in the snow with the wood in his hand. Thank you, Pasha. I wish you luck. May God help you. While Kalpakli shook my head with a smile, Ali held his mother's hand and they disappeared at the end of the snowy street. While the smile on my lips curled up with joy, I stared at the heart shape that Ali had drawn on the ground with the piece of wood in his hand. If these children were concerned about saving the country instead of playing games, we certainly owe a debt to these children. As soon as Seysavar and I entered the headquarters door, the smell of moisture mixed with the smell of wood hit our noses. When I quickly climbed up, Sesmi was sitting at Fute's table. When he saw us coming, he stood up, pushing the chair under him, and continued to look at me with his shining eyes. Good morning, Sesmi. Good morning, Ralph Pasha. My brows furrowed as my eyes darted between rooms. Fute. Has Fute arrived yet? While Sesmi's face was shadowed, a doubt came into his eyes. Actually, I was thinking about that too, Pasha. Fute was never one to be late. As if I wanted to erase the bad thoughts from my mind, I continued my words with my voice that was not very strong. The human condition, don't you see the weather outside? It will be here soon. While I was trying to put on a relieved expression on my face, my heart was still beating fast and my breath was short. Let's wait a little longer. There is no need for unnecessary alarm, Pasha. I tried to stay calm with Seysavar's voice. As I was about to enter my room with my hands in my pockets, Sesmi's loud voice filled my ears again. Pasha, before I forget, Mr. Namek sent the list of students. After taking the paper he handed me with misty eyes, I entered my room with the squeak of my leather boots and sat on my chair. I started to cry as I glanced at the paper Namek gave me. My eyes filled with tears of pride as I whispered the numbers and names 301 Tariq, 302 Fevtsi, 303 Sinan, 304 Mehmet, 305 Zulfu, 306 Salih, 307 Arif, through my lips. As I leaned back on the chair, having lost all hope, I took my revolver from my waist, placed it on my table, and caressed the metal handle of my gun with my fingers. While he was watching the red flag hanging on the wall with calm eyes, the door of the room was knocked with strong fists. You can come in. The door slowly opened and Seysavar's sharp gaze appeared at the door. Pasha. I'm listening to you, Seysavar, I said, sitting up from the chair I was sitting on. Axihir Sultanicized students who will join the army have arrived. Pasha, they will meet with you. While my eyes were shining, I quickly put on my cashmere coat on the iron hanger and ran downstairs. Two young people sitting on wing chairs in the lobby caught my attention. While their eyes were shining brightly, their mouths reached their ears. When they saw me coming, they got up from where they were sitting and stood ready. As I walked towards them with a smile, I said, 301 Tariq and 302 Fizi. They smiled helplessly through their mouths. Welcome. We welcome you, Ralph Pasha, we welcome you, said Tariq, while straightening his wavy hair. Shouldn't you be in class at school at this hour? While Fizi stared at her feet in shame with her olive-black eyes that complemented her flushed cheeks, Tariq curled his lower lip. Well, my Pasha. We wrote a letter to our loved ones. We either see them again or we don't. While we have come this far, we wanted to express our debt of gratitude to you. Yes, Ralph Pasha, we cannot be grateful enough to you. As a young member of the Committee of Union and Progress, it would be an honor for me to take my last breath at the front. Fizi spoke with excitement while trying to keep her red cheeks close to the stove. Don't think badly. You will defend your homeland with the heart of a lion and return to your hometown, Ateş. Tarek smiled bitterly while avoiding me. We are going not to return, but to die, Commander Ralph. My words got stuck in my throat. I couldn't swallow and just stood there. May God give you strength, young people. He looked into my eyes with his sparkling eyes. Amen, sir. Amen. Taking his red fez under his hand, he scratched his hair and turned to Fizi. Ralph Pasha, let's go. We will be late for school. Ateş is entrusted to you. We will not suppress the enemy's sandals against Kanakale, God willing. I patted his shoulder in a friendly manner as I looked at my broadcloth uniform with pride. When Tarek left the headquarters with lazy steps with his friend Fizi, the snow was continuing to fall as if it were falling from the sky. As I looked behind them with my sorrowful eyes, I felt my heart sink and the gloom in my mind increase. They disappeared, merrily playing snowballs, as if they weren't the ones to join the army. As I wandered off into the distance, I was distracted by Enver's voice. Ralph Pasha. Sir Enver. I heard the despair and pathos in his voice. Are you okay? I sighed in annoyance. I'm fine. I just feel sorry for these little students. I listened to the sound of his leather boots on the wooden floor, and he came down the steps and approached me. I have news for you, Pasha, he said, but it's not good news. My eyes burned like fire as drop by drop of sweat rolled down my forehead and down to my neck. What's the news, Enver? Don't drive him crazy, tell me. Fiat, she said in sobs, biting her upper lip and lower lip and letting her tears flow. His body was shaking in his pale uniform. What happened to Fiat, Enver? Say it. While my trumpet call was echoing between the bare walls, it was the first time I shouted so loudly at a close friend of mine. They assassinated Fiat to take revenge on us for killing the Greek commanders. Fiat was shot by a group of Greek soldiers while he was leaving the mosque after performing the morning prayer. The shrapnel pieces hit Fiat's most critical points. He was currently lying seriously injured in the Ateş Medical Center. I was watching him with my eyes filled with tears as his helpless voice trembled. What do you say, Enver? She lowered her tearful eyes helplessly to the ground and sighed in distress. Sanitary Dr. Hassan Bey just called. Ralph Pasha, let's go and see Fiat. I covered my face with my hands and sobbed deeply. My other friends, Sesmi, Tullet, and Saysavar, who heard me crying, also ran down the steps. What happened? Enver continued his words, trying to collect his voice. Fiat was seriously injured. When we arrived in front of the sanitary building, the distress in my heart deepened and my eyes widened with distress. As I thought about the revolution and my comrade in arms, the tears that flowed from my eyes were dripping down my cheeks onto the snow. Please be patient, friends. Do not upset Fiat by crying. Even though saying these while my eyes were red did not satisfy my friends, the determination in my voice was enough for them. As soon as I entered the building, an intense smell of ethyl alcohol and tincture of iodine hit my nose. As I heard the screams of wounded soldiers and people and grimaced in pain, I approached the doctor standing in his white coat and asked in a whisper, "Excuse me, I wonder where the injured person named Fiat lies." The doctor continued speaking, blowing the cigarette smell from his mouth towards me. Mr. Dr. Hassan will help you with this. His long and bony index finger was pointing at the tall and straight-chinned man in a checkered shirt, standing in front of the door opposite me. I thanked the man and stepped next to Dr. Hassan Bey. Hello, Hassan Bey, right? He looked me up and down with his olive-black eyes. Yes, it's me. His voice seemed to be insulting me. I am Commander Ralph, from the Committee of Union and Progress. We came to see my friend Fiat. I spoke with all seriousness, covering up my soft voice. Ah. Oh, I'm sorry. We are really in trouble these days. That's why we welcomed you like this. Your friend Fiat is lying here. Please let's be quiet, he said, but the expression on his face suddenly became calm. Unfortunately, his chances of survival are very low. Take a last look at him. After finishing his words, he lowered his gaze. I swallowed forcefully, my eyes filled with tears involuntarily. As I nodded my head towards the doctor, I stepped through the door he opened. My hands and feet were numb, and my lips were trembling. Fiat, unaware of himself, was lying on his bed with his naked body. The bullet points had stained the snow-white sheet red. While my friends and I were standing over Fiat, we looked at each other. Our eyes were filled with tears, but we promised ourselves not to cry. Fiat, I hope you hear me. Now listen carefully to what I have to say, okay? This war tired all of us, but it tired you even more. They couldn't even appear in front of you because they were afraid of those bright and lively eyes of yours. They treacherously ambushed you at your best time. You were close to God. You were close to your homeland and nation. We are here. Look, as always, we are with you. These scoundrels will never understand your heart. You are a child of this country, Silüet, a brave-hearted son. I couldn't hold back my sobs as I caressed his fingers, which were getting colder, and looked into his eyes, which had drained blood. I felt Enver's fingers on my shoulder, and at that moment I opened my eyes and spoke with a shaky voice. Goodbye, Silüet. Farewell. As I slowly let go of his increasingly cold hand, I covered my mouth with my hand and screamed inwardly. All my friends took turns saying goodbye to our distinguished friend. As I left him there, my heart was aching and my feet were constantly pulling themselves back. While I was trying to wipe my tears, I came face to face with Tabip Hassan. He walked in with nervous steps right behind us and came to us, covering Silüet's face with a white sheet. While the white cloth was covering Silüet's white, mustachioed and well-formed face, it was as if my soul was being pulled from my feet to my legs. While wiping the blood on his fingers on one side of his snow-white apron, he sighed deeply and added, My condolences. I couldn't swallow. I ran out of the medical building without saying anything while looking into the doctor's eyes. As I inhaled the sour scent emanating from the linden trees surrounding the sanitary building, a steely cold hit my face like a slap. As my dull gaze wandered through the trees in the medic's garden, I could hear my friends coming behind me. Pasha, please be astute. Believe me, Silüet would not want it to happen like this. Sesmi wiped the tears from his eyes while stroking his mustache with curved ends on his nose, red from the cold. Please wait here. I'll go up and come back. No one should come. While my friends looked away from me in embarrassment, I quickly climbed the stone steps. When I looked out the window, which was letting in a dusty beam of light, my friends were standing in the cold. I called out to the tall doctor at the end of the building's dim corridor. Mr. Hassan. Mr. Hassan. He came towards me, wiping the sweat from his forehead. Here you go, Mr. Ralph. I want to ask you something. While his eyebrows were furrowed, he continued his speech. I am listening to you, Ralph Pasha. Last evening, my voice shook as I said, Who brought Silüet injured last night? While the doctor thought for a while with misty eyes, he caressed his newly emerging beard. I'm sorry, I couldn't remember exactly, but let's see. His hand reached into the drawer next to him and quickly took out the straw yellow paper at the top. He curled his lip as his absent-minded eyes wandered over the names written in ugly handwriting. His eyes shining. I found it, said. I succumbed to my curiosity. Who? Ali. My heartbeat accelerated. Someone named Ali Riza brought Silüet Bey to the medical clinic. When the doctor finished his words, my blood almost froze, and beads of sweat dripped from my forehead and wet my neck. It's not an important issue, is it, Mr. Ralph? No, I just wanted to know, I said, putting a fake smile on my dry lips. Thanks anyway. I wish you luck. When I quickly descended the stone steps at the end of the corridor I came from, my friends, who were randomly sitting on the snowy wooden benches in the garden, stood up from where they were sitting with excitement. What happened, Pasha? I rubbed my fingers as I placed the wire-framed glasses that had come down to the tip of my nose back onto my nose with the index finger of my left hand. Nothing. Let's go. Come on. Are you sure, Ralph Pasha? I shook my head as I put the black cap on my head again. While I was walking with determined steps, my friends just preferred to remain silent. Just as I was passing in front of the Grand Mosque, my eyes caught sight of the courtyard of the mosque. The water splashing against the marble in the fountain in the middle of the courtyard had frozen, and the birds that could not drink water from the fountain had perched under the fountain just to find a secluded place. I went down the stone steps to the mosque courtyard, ignoring my friends. While I was looking around the courtyard with bitter eyes, my eyes caught a bright object on the ground. My shaking hand quickly reached for the object on the ground, and when I cleared the snow off the metal object, my fingers were frozen from the cold. It was a pocket watch, and when I lifted the lid I found it still ticking. Silüet. This watch belonged to Silüet, my Pasha. As I raised my head, I came face to face with Saysavar. He left such a mark that his heroic heart, his clock is still ticking. I smiled bitterly. At that time, the noon call to prayer was heard from the minaret. While I was looking at the snowflakes blowing from the ashen clouds, the peaceful tumult of the call to prayer filled my ears. As my heart beat faster, I read the text on the cover of the watch with pain in my heart. Pyre. As I closed the metal watch and pressed it against my palm, I thought of Silüet. I slowly put the metal watch into my pocket. While tears were flowing down my eyes, the sound of Adhan was echoing in my ears. Third day noon. Hello, Irva. Every word I said while looking into your eyes, every split second I held your hand, every moment I touched your hair was so important to me. I don't know what you are doing right now, where you are, but my heart aches so much. Even if I am in the war, I said I will always love you. Even if I die in this war, I will love you in my next life. I wrote these words on my heart. My only wish is for you to write these words in the most special place of your heart. I read Crime and Punishment. Do we have other novels to read? I am writing these letters to you with all my hope while the ink at the tip of my pen is fading. I put my soul in a corner, in the darkest dungeon. I couldn't understand whether it was the revolution that burned me or the lustful love I felt for you. Another day has passed. Another day the sun has risen. I never stopped saying, you are still my hope. Irva, why are you crying, my son Ralph? It turned out that I was crying. I immediately wiped my tears and looked at my grandmother Paloma. I'm not crying, Grandma Paloma. I'm not crying. While she was tying her white hair that resembled cotton, her sad eyes looked at me and her lips curled in pain. Oh my child, oh my Ralph. You have gone through difficult times. You have come across a nation-sacred time. You couldn't live your love. You buried your friend. Your struggle was for this nation. May God reunite you with Irva soon. I felt a pain in my throat while swallowing. While I don't even know whether she is dead or alive, I am waiting for the path of love in my heart, Grandma Paloma. As I helplessly put the pin between my fingers, I looked at Grandma Paloma with tearful eyes. He held my hand with his soft white hands and brought it to his beating heart. He smiled at me as I looked at him with meaningless eyes. Look, Ralph, I believe with all my heart that Irva loves you too and is dying to meet you. With the last desperation left in me, I sighed with a smile to make him happy. I can look into your eyes even though I can't see you. I can feel your scent in my nose even though I can't smell you. I can feel the warmth of your skin in my palm without touching you. It turns out that love is being able to feel the warmth of your loved one in despair. I'm glad you made me think like this, my dear. For love, souls and love need to be together, not bodies. While I was adjusting the woolen socks on her feet, I inhaled the lavender scent from her hair, and my mother came to my mind. She smelled so good too. She loved me like that too. Maybe that's why I loved Grandma Paloma so much. Grandma Paloma soothed my tears in all the letters I wrote to you. I'm sorry if the papers are wet for you, okay? The war taught me bitter love. I never underestimated love and never oversimplified it. I saw you and suddenly fell in love in the middle of the war. It would be debatable if you asked about the time, but you completed my soul at this time. I'm glad you became my Irva. I'm glad I fell in love with you in a difficult time.